found in several ministries, agencies, and departments, you had square pegs in round holes.
You could almost say that public sector transformation is not a GLP policy, it's not a PNP policy. It is national policy.
There was political willingness, there was bipartisan support for going through with the reforms, there was societal support, a lot of societal sacrifices. People of Jamaica made a lot of sacrifices. And businesses, the private sector, everybody was engaged in this journey.
We want to continue to reform the public sector, to allow the public sector to provide the services to the Jamaican people, provide services to the private sector, and the idea is that those services must be more accessible. Those services must be more affordable. Those services must be faster. They must be more personable and comfortable for the citizen.
Watch Building a Better Public Sector, a 4-part docuseries right here on CVM, commencing April 5 and aired every Sunday in April at 3 p.m. Brought to you by the Transformation Implementation Unit.
Let's delve deep into the issues. We'll take you beneath the surface.
Greetings and salutations. My name is Orville Higgins and it's another edition of Fan Central.
Talking to the people at the heart of the top sporting stories. Hear from your favorite sportsmen and women and the administrators who work tirelessly to make it all happen. It's live sports talk.
I've written an entire article.
Yes.
Looking at all the major issues every Tuesday at 9 p.m. It's Fan Central.
Welcome to this exciting and flavor-filled corporate wellness challenge, Healthy Recipe Cough.
We are the Sugar Industry Authority. We are raring to go and win the championship.
We are Team NHT. We're excited and we're here to claim the trophy.
Team CB is super excited and we are ready to showcase our talent.
This initiative demonstrates that healthy eating can be accessible and creative. Let's go!
Tune in to CVM Television this Good Friday, April 3rd at 8 p.m. Presented by the Ministry of Health and Wellness, a Jamaica Moves initiative.
Hi, I am Kendi Pangat.
Watagwan.
Watagwan.
Datagwan.
Watagwan. Watagwan.
Watagwan. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 8 a.m., 1:30 p.m., and 10 p.m. on CVM TV.
Datagwan pa Watagwan.
The internationally acclaimed On Stage with Winfred Williams.
At a new time, Saturdays at 8 p.m. on CVM TV.
So much more than entertainment.
Explore this issue are Dr. Jeffrey Walcott, consultant psychiatrist, Milton Tomlinson, community development practitioner, and sociologist Orville Beckford. Welcome to you all. Let me start here, and I want to tell all of you who are watching this, I want to start off with everybody on the panel because this is a serious question. Are men in Jamaica failing, or are they operating in a system that no longer works for them? Milton, let me start off with you. You work at a community level. This is where men are coming to you and they're telling you what's going on quietly. What are they quietly saying to you that they're not saying in public?
Say firstly that men are not failing, but as you'd say, economics, cost of living, things are out of control in some regards. So they are feeling pressured to provide. They're feeling pressure to even take care of themselves in the right way, you know. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on as it relates to that. There's no safe space for men to freely express themselves without being, you'd call stereotype or even make a mockery of, criticize and stuff like that. So, you know, men internalize a lot of stuff.
So when they speak to you, what do they say? Or are they open and willing to speak with you?
It's not everyone is open. Some is open, some is not, right? And these are the issues that they talk about, the pressure that they're feeling, you know? Can't provide for myself, can't do things that I'd like to do. Those are some of the things that they're concerned about, you know?
They're not having these conversations, Dr. Walcott, when they speak with Milton. Some of them, though, might be coming to someone like you. When men finally present to you, what condition are they coming in? And are they coming in early, or are they coming in when they're deep in crisis?
Unfortunately, I think the answer to that question is that they're not talking to us either. Because when men do access mental health services, they are usually brought in by relatives. It is very rare that you're going to have our men seeking help in the early stage of any illness, because there's an issue of stigma. Men in general have poor health-seeking behavior because there is the thought that they can push through things. So when they do come to me, in most instances, it's in a state of crisis. So it's less of a conversation and more of an intervention. And unfortunately, a lot of the times the intervention is involuntary because they also lack insight and awareness as to how severe the problems are. So that's the unfortunate issue. So when you quoted the suicide statistics with the 92% men who have killed themselves in this country, this is not surprising. It's alarming, but it's not surprising.
It doesn't surprise you, but you said two things there: poor health-seeking behaviors and that they're already in crisis. Talk to us about what those two mean, because it seems to connect this idea that men don't go get the help that they need, and then what does crisis look like if they're in fact not getting that help?
So one of the issues is that for men, when they're having early signs, and it's more societal than anything else. Men are expected to push through things and to power through things and not to complain about minor inconveniences.
Exactly.
But the reality is that these are how a lot of the problems start. For example, a simple thing like sleep disturbance. If a woman is having sleep problems, she will reach out to her general practitioner and she will seek help because she's not sleeping. Men don't do that. They'll push through that. And usually when you're having problems with sleep or appetite issues, those are the early signs that will cascade into more severe mental symptoms down the line, and in a very short space of time, not even a lengthy period. And so they don't tend to react to early symptoms. And by the time it gets to a place where it is a crisis, and the crisis now is that the person is no longer functioning, the person may be disconnected from reality, is completely incapable of making rational decisions. That's when they usually get brought in to the mental health service by their family members, concerned friends and family. So that's the state that most times occurs.
That's a weighty situation, though, to have men in need of the support, in need of the care, and as you both have said to us, not have the safe space, not feel that they have the safe space, or have them wait so long then to access the help and support that they need. Let me turn to sociologist here. Mr. Beckford, Dr. Orville Beckford, you're talking to us from a situation where Jamaicans are looking at the definition of masculinity. That's been brought up by both of our panelists in studio here. This idea of what men should be, what they should feel or not feel, apparently. Has the definition of masculinity adapted to today's economy, or is it still rooted in that very provider, half a big man, half a fine money model that's becoming harder and harder to sustain with the economies that we have?
It has becoming harder and harder. It has been a deep-seated cultural behavior in terms of how we construct masculinity and femininity. Deep, deep, deep. And so, as you said, the masculinity part, there are things that are necessary for your mental illness. that is not part of the male Jamaican masculinity. So, for example, connection. There are a few of us, like I have a KC group of friends that I meet with. It's a connection that keep you mentally sane. Then the coping, men must put on this bravado of coping all the time, even when you're not coping. You know, you must show this kind of bravado that you are coping. You also expected in the social construction of masculinity to remain calm, as if no matter even the house is burning down, you must remain calm. Men shouldn't get frightened and raise their voice and whatever. You shouldn't. Then you also required that you must show care, but you're being asked to show care when your social construction, your socialization was not one that show care. The boy picnic shouldn't cry. If you cry, it's because you're weak. So so for you to know, just all of a sudden, show care by reasoning with other people, finding solutions, no. And then the last one no, is compassion. You're not socialized to show compassion, believe you me, you're not. And so the expectation of you are socialized this way, but the expectation of modern society and the modern woman is different at the modern household or modern children.
I think that's a really, really sticky place then for us as we watch this problem of men facing heavy burdens, not having somewhere to go, but all of these things around them are pushing them in various directions. Let's take a break here inside Lead Story Prime, because if the economy and what we expect of men is...
Can you do this?
Jesus Christ loves you, and greater love hath no man. Because of his love, he opens the way. He opens eyes, ears, and minds. Open your heart and experience General Conference of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and feel his love. Greater love.
The internationally acclaimed On Stage with Winfred Williams.
At a new time, Saturdays at 8 p.m. on CVM TV.
So much more than entertainment.
Story Prime. We're discussing men, money, and mental collapse. And we've established that the crisis is real and that is documented. Now we examine the architecture of the failure. The government has a mental health unit. It is a national helpline, 888 New Life. Minister Tufton has spoken publicly about normalizing mental health care in Jamaica. But the question tonight is not whether the helpline exists. The question is whether the system is designed to reach the people who most need it and who are least likely to reach for it. We continue on with our panel this evening. Dr. Walcott, I want to say obliquely made mention of this, but I'll talk more directly about this. Is the mental health system in Jamaica designed in a way that men are unlikely to use? If we even wanted them to have better health-seeking behavior, is there something in it or some obstacle through the process that would have them not feel comfortable, not the way that they communicate, not best suited for them, especially with the outcomes that we see in suicide statistics?
Yeah, not really. So part of the issue, I think it's two separate things you're dealing with. So when you look at the mental health system as it is developed, over the past 50 or 60 years, you are moving from mental health services that existed in 2 or 3 institutions that were spread in far and wide throughout the country to mental health service being accessible now in about 200 to 300 facilities all over the island in multiple parishes. We have a mental health crisis unit in almost every parish. where persons can get access to emergency care in their homes, where teams can go and follow up. The issue is not really whether there's something that is pushing men away. Nothing has ever pulled men to healthcare systems. Nothing has ever drawn them to say, look, we need to be taking better care of ourselves, we need to be taking better care, looking more preventative. And a lot of it has to do with how, yes, the socialization is one thing, but the patterns of how men access healthcare. So if you look at women, for example, women see routine healthcare as the norm because in most cases, women from early start, their introduction is really through reproductive health. Women go to the gynecologist, they have regular checkups, they do their regular contact. So they are cultured into almost a system where they're cultured to think mental health is a part of their day-to-day routine and life. Men only access healthcare services when there's a significant problem, and not just a regular problem, a significant problem. How many times you've gone to play sports and you fall and the hands swollen or so, and you wait it out. You wait to see if it's broken before you go to the doctor. Yeah. Men are cultured in that.
Which is part of, as well, something that Dr. Beckford spoke of, Milton spoke of, which is this idea that men just, not to have feelings, you make it work.
Right.
So that is also complicating that.
Definitely. That's one of the areas of complication.
You said that men aren't being pulled into that system. If they're not being pushed away from it, what can we do to pull them into it? What can we do to have them now see that this is, in fact, if women, you say, are having these more routine health checks, how do we allow men to have this to be a more routine part of their life as well?
One of the issues that we would focus on, especially in the mental health services, is the business of psychoeducation and explaining and going through different community groups, different sectors, what the symptoms are, what the early warning signs are, what the process would be. Because a lot of times men feel like the process is uncomfortable and they often highlight negatives when they go into healthcare services, but we try to remove the mystery for as much as possible when it comes to health-seeking behavior. And we go through groups that have some level of impact and influence. Churches, you have community groups, you have service groups that tend to form connections with men within the community. Sporting groups, those are usually the areas that can deliver the message, so we get persons to be able to do screening earlier, to actually access the health facility, to access care in a preventative manner rather than a reactionary manner to a difficult situation or a crisis. That's what we're shifting towards.
I think that reactionary behavior is what we want to stop. But Milton, before I go to Dr. Beckford here, we're having a situation where we've spoken about economy, we've spoken about money, we've spoken about some of the things that can pressure men. And there are quite a multitude of them. But today's show wants to hone in on this sense of value that men will place and society will place and women in partnership will place on money, the kinds of difficulties they might have after Hurricane Melissa, the kinds of difficulties they might have with taking care of a family, taking care of themselves. All of that then allows for men to feel that there is not only hopelessness, but nobody to share what they're going through with. What happens when a man can't meet that standard of provider man, that standard of money man, that standard of someone who has resources in real terms, as you see on the ground?
All right, so as Dr. Beckford said, it is real. It is how men in Jamaica have been culturalized, right? You were brought up in your household to be a provider, right? You were brought up to be a provider. As Dr. Walcott had said, you fall down, they wait it out, they burn it up, they sap it with whatever. The sister, the ladies in the house, they would take them to the doctor. So from early out, you're being pushed back.
So provider in the sense of financial provider,
right,
but not emotional provider, provider of care and support, not provider of household chores, not provider of all these other things. It's a very narrow road.
Right, exactly. And that in itself can be pressuring, because how often somebody look at a man and say, how are you? How is your day? What is happening? You know? Have a good conversation. Most times, what is it that you can do? How is it that you provide? You understand me? So men are in that mode of being just a provider. So you have to think between what it is that you have and how it is that you're going to provide. So you're on the back burner.
You're saying it as though men have just received this system. There's an argument that says men have set this system up, that a lot of the responsibility and weight of taking care of persons and others and community, men have shunted for, and to have exclusively this sort of provider role that they've boxed themselves in. You can be the provider who provides emotional support and care and builds that community for others. Why don't men do that?
Again, it is based upon how you socialize, how you culturalize. It is from small to now. So it has a lot to do with how you were brought up. You know, your social circle. As Doc could tell you, he would have some friends from KC, that's his safe space, his social circle with them. A lot of these guys, they're all in the same level of socialization. They're still in a box. So there's no one to say, this is how it is supposed to be, this is how we can provide, this is how we can assist in other ways. Now you have men, you know, in society who would provide emotional support and all of that too.
Well, I know that Dr. Walcott wants to pull it in, and I see Dr. Beckford as well wanting to respond to this, because part of the tension here that we're seeing is we want our men to be safe. We want them to be able to have people to speak to them. What is it then that men are feeling so that we can have a better appreciation of it? And do they even feel that anybody's asking, as you said, what it is that they're going through? Dr. Walcott, to you first before I go to Dr. Beckford.
You made a comment that, again, is part of the problem that we have, right? Our society is not homogeneous. And we keep having this thing about men. Our society, Jamaica in particular, is a post-slave society. Black men did not build this society. It was thrown upon us. We were forced into it, vicious and brutally. So the system that we inherited to live, to provide, to this and that, was not ours that make it. We didn't build it. We didn't build inequality.
The same can be said, though, for the role that black women play in Jamaican society.
We didn't. And that's we didn't. So why are we fighting with each other about it?
Never to fight.
No, but hold on, the issue is this. And he hit a very good point. It's the way our men are raised and brought up. Because there's an elephant in the room that we keep missing, and this is the business of what we call adverse childhood experiences. Men and women in this country go through adverse childhood experiences with color and warp their way of resilience and their way of dealing with problems, and that is rampant. While they go through the adverse childhood experiences, both genders, the type is different. Women would be more likely or more prevalent to have psychosexual abuse in childhood than men.
In Jamaica.
In this country. And men will be more likely to have physical abuse. There are other abuse like neglect, which are equally shared among them, and certain things like breaking families and single family households, family incarcerated, family mental illness, which has no gender disparity. But those are the realities. And physical abuse and psychosexual abuse sprout different pathological patterns. And that's what you see.
And I think that is so important that you've put that in here as we better appreciate what men are going through. Dr. Beckford, let me pull you in here, because we're having this conversation now about the kinds of weights that men carry and why they're carrying those weights. Talk to us about that, especially your reaction to what you've just heard Milton and Dr. Walcott say.
Well, let me go first with Milton. In terms of the culture, this culture of us, men do provide, men do help with children, child rearing, but you're not credited for it. If you bathe the baby, burp the baby, walk the baby, it doesn't matter if you have no money to provide for the baby. Move on. If you can't provide, just move on. And so on. So the economic structure and the economic status of men is the main cause of mental illness. You're always being called upon to provide. Whether you're in the church, whether it's home or wherever it is, you are the provider, and that alone put men under stress. There's a theory we have in sociology named the strain theory. Because you can't get the normal things in society, that's why people go on thief and so on. So men, not only that they turn to nefarious activities, but it affects them mentally. To answer
because they can't meet the more
expectation.
Right. So they find other ways and other hierarchies to find themselves located in.
Yeah, including a mental state that For them it is normal, but to other people it is a mental state. How they think, they start to behave differently, they start to ostracize themselves, and so they become mental. But another point is that mental health is more sociological than it is physiological. There are a number of people who think that mental health is physiological. No. Most of it is sociological. The issues that drive you to that mental state. And not just the socialization, but the constant expectation of society, of the male, even when the society has changed. They still expect that the male will be the sole provider, come what may. We are seeing more men walk with their children, taking them to school, and when I see them in the morning, I say to myself, I hope that the mother count it for something, because as you know, whether you care, whether you show compassion, if you have no money, then you have you really have no say in the household. And so the social roles are important in terms of how you are treated. Men are marginalized sometimes from the household. That also leaves them mental. Poverty is something that also leaves you mental. If you can't, if you're hungry without any possibility of food for a day or two, it will send you in a mental state.
And I think you highlighting this series of things, Dr. Beckford, better helps persons at home to appreciate the kinds of stresses that are happening in our households and with our men. Let's take a quick break here inside Lead Story Prime and come back.
Change does not happen overnight. It takes vision, commitment, and courage to.
Hi, I am Candy Pang.
Watagwan. Watagwan.
Watagwan. Watagwan.
Watagwan. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 8 a.m., 1:30 p.m., and 10 p.m. on CVM TV.
The internationally acclaimed On Stage with Winfred Williams.
At a new time, Saturdays at 8 p.m. on CVM TV.
So much more than entertainment.
Start your journey with a Jane Bank Small Business Loan with small business loans with as little as $10,000 and up to $4 million.
The time is 8:30.
Welcome to this exciting and flavor-filled corporate wellness challenge, Healthy Recipe Cost.
We are the Sugar Industry Authority. We are raring to go and win the championship.
We are Team NHT. We're excited and we're here to claim the trophy.
Team CB is super excited and we are ready to showcase our talent.
This initiative demonstrates that healthy eating can be accessible and creative. Let's go!
Tune in to CVM Television this Good Friday, April 3rd at 8 p.m. Presented by the Ministry of Health and Wellness, a Jamaica Moves initiative.
Welcome back. We're discussing men, money, and mental collapse, and we are focused right now on where they can get help. Jamaica is a highly connected society, but connection doesn't always mean support. When men cannot cope with economic pressure, they don't always collapse visibly. Sometimes they simply disappear into gaming, into social media, into alcohol. Withdrawal masquerading as composure, or a smile masquerading as stability. The Pan American Health Organization has flagged the Americas is the only region in the world where suicide deaths have increased since the year 2000, a rise of 17%. And PAHO notes that Caribbean nations continue to report the region's highest suicide mortality rates. Jamaica is therefore not an outlier. Jamaica is at the center of this pattern. Dr. Beckford, to you. Are digital spaces becoming a substitute for community or a form of escape from reality? Because some men don't have a KC old boys group like you, or men that they can hang out with. And we've seen reporting after COVID-19 where when men had to stay inside, they lost weak link connections. The people you'd go to the bar or you'd go to places to occasionally watch football matches with or see them, they lost even those weak bonds. Where then are men going to get help and to hang out?
Okay, with respect to let's go back to the COVID section. When we had to stay inside for a long period of time, we had a lot of high levels of domestic violence during that time, very high levels. Why? Because there's a social prerequisite, that's my term, that you get from interacting. So you do things outside and people say, no, that's bad. Or people said, you could have answered the person differently. When that was absent, it means that people went through all kind of mental depression and so on. Also, the fact that you're now sequestered with your family, and for those who can't provide, it created additional mental strain. And so one of the things that I said we have to do as a nation is to start a program in which we start to re-socialize our male. We're coming out of slavery, as mentioned by Milton earlier, our Doc, and it was a violent slavery. You could have a child, but you weren't responsible for the child. You're not the person who clothed the child, fed the child, and nothing at all. The slave owner owned the child. So therefore, you have no connection with a family. After slavery, it took us a couple of hundred of years for men to understand that a lady get pregnant is your responsibility. Because for 300 years, it wasn't our responsibility. And then all the physical torture, the mental torture that we go through, which is why we end up with a lot of morbidities from slavery. And so the nation will have to start a re-socialization program, starting from the prep school, primary school, right up, in terms of men being able to be social, to understand emotion, to show emotions. There are some of us, when we showed emotions as a child, we were beaten badly for showing emotion, like crying. And so it calls for deep social intervention. We had such a program in the ministry years ago when we had high levels of teenage pregnancy. We had a long running program that lasted for almost 30 years. And so we were managed to bring down teenage pregnancy far, far, far down. We need to do the same thing about men.
And then a specific, targeted, directed intervention now that doesn't just say we have a problem, but then actively works to making sure that we societally see a change in this. In the same that two is better than too many childbearing campaign helped yield us results in the early 80s or the late 80s and the 90s. Milton, part of what Dr. Beckford said a while ago, though, raised some concerns that you had mentioned during the break, which is the connection between mental health and these sorts of different avenues that young men will then decide that they're going to be paying attention to. If they can't meet these regular standards of being a provider in societally accepted ways, they might turn to criminality, or they might be exposed to a level of criminality that hardens them in ways that doesn't allow for things that you, Dr. Walcott and Dr. Beckford are talking about, allows them to see themselves as more. Talk to us about what kinds of societies we have in Jamaica, and I'll call some of the communities that persons live in that are far outside the grasp and scope of many Jamaicans who don't live in them, that harden our young men in ways that don't allow them to then see themselves as worthy of the care and support and attention that we so clearly are seeing in our statistics that they need.
Yeah, so, you know, it is very important and interesting at the same time, because what you would have seen sometimes out there, not sometimes, what is happening out there is that we normalized mental illness. We normalize it. If it is that the person don't get dirty or behave in a very much of an outrageous way, we don't give attention. Definitely don't give attention. There's a lot of things, sir, that our youngsters grapple with from the community level, some of these community. The gang violence that happens in these communities, the pressure to take side in order to defend yourself or your family, the level of that level of violence and activity also plays on your mental health, right? And you call it the adverse child experience is what really shape a lot of these young men in these communities.
And with that shaping, then, it means that Jamaica has to look at what it is that we provide for not only our children, but also our adult men who are overrepresented in our suicide statistics. Let's take a look at what Amoy Harriet has found in her research that helps us better have an idea of what men across Jamaica are dealing with.
When we think about mental health, we tend to focus on family and friends. But what about the people who may not necessarily be family or friends, but we see them every single day? Every day we share spaces, conversations, and deadlines with our co-workers. But how often do we really ask how they're doing mentally, especially our male co-workers?
I'm okay. I can't complain. I'm good. Best I can be at this point.
As of right now, I'm not doing too bad. I have a rough day today, but I'm holding on. I'm here. Because it's a lot to dig up. You know, especially as a man when we're told to bottle up our emotions. You know. Manage your stress. How the talk go again? You know the talk. You don't know the talk. You know, say, hold up your stress. And it's hard, especially in this society as a young man, to kind of cope with the needs of society or the needs, you know, that social media just places on us. And you see how I sweat right now, I stress that right now, I sweat. Nervous. Talk about my emotions and attack it head on and everything, because it's not even something I'm used to. So even though I might sound like I'm able to express myself properly, it's hard. It's not being able to, but it's more, do you want to? Because what are the consequences of doing that? You know? What's going to be the reaction?
And he's not the only one who feels this way. For generations, men were conditioned to stay silent, mask the stress, bury the emotions, never let it show. I asked my co-workers whether they felt men's mental health struggles are being taken seriously.
Oh no, them only thought that. All of that amount. Action, not up, all of that amount. All of that amount. They don't really, there's no emphasis placed on bettering men's mental health. All of that are top.
I guess women's, what's the word? Their needs are more important than men, just as much as children is more important than men. So is it that men don't get a lot of shine? Yes. But I think that just comes with being a provider, I guess. You don't have that higher up to look at you and say, oh, how are you doing today?
And I don't think the mental health of men are taken as seriously as that of women. Men on a whole were cultivated from boys as to be strong, be tough. When a man has problems, he internalizes it rather than speak it out, whether to spouse or other family members or friends. Women, they will speak out the problem right away, and other people here and somewhere along the line, they get help. For us, the majority of men, as I said before, we don't speak out.
There's definitely a stigma. There's definitely like you don't want to come across as soft, as weak, right? And compared to women, yeah, I think that by and large, I think men are not expected to have a broad emotional range. You're kind of expected to kind of be happy and angry, not really have access to sad, not really have access to fear, and everybody's still experiencing all those things. So if you're not if you're not tapping into it, if you're not addressing it, then you can't just build up.
Let's put men's mental health into context. Suicide is at a 23-year high in Jamaica, 67 deaths in 2024, and 91% of those deaths were men. Globally, men in the Americas die by suicide at nearly 4 times the rate of women, and Jamaica's data tracks above the regional pattern. Now, of note, peer-reviewed Jamaican clinical data confirms men are the demographic least likely to seek mental health care. But behind these numbers, behind the statistics, are men we see every day, showing up, holding it together, while silently falling through the cracks. It's back to you, Jody.
That's Amoy telling us the information. They're sharing these stories of men, how they feel, what it is that they have access to sharing, and what it is that they feel society wants or does not want to hear from them at all. We'll take a break and come back to Lead Story Prime, asking
From the market to the farm to the office, money talk is everywhere. But are you making sense or nonsense? The Bank of Jamaica brings you common sense with BOJ, real stories, real laughs, and real lessons to help you protect, grow, and manage your money. Mattress savings.
At least my mattress. You charge me to sleep on it.
Partner plan.
Remember last year we needed our payouts early? But Miss Pam gave it to her cousin first.
Or a sketchy loan flyer.
Electrifying deals.
See why making the right financial choices is pure common sense. Brought to you by Bank of Jamaica, empowering everyday Jamaicans one episode at a time.
Grandpa, it's 2026. You can't keep hiding all your money in every single pocket forever.
Discussing men, money, and mental collapse. And we can't afford to have half of our population collapse at all. So we're looking to close with solutions, ways that we can practically support our men as we have clearly highlighted some of the issues that they are facing. So one question to all of you first. What's the single most effective intervention we could implement right now to change this trajectory? Dr. Walcott, to you first.
I think, as Prof said, we try not to separate biology from the psychological and social aspects, because what really needs to happen is re-socialization. So I think one of the most impactful things is to reconnect and expand the connection, community connection. Because we've moved away from community-based groups and interactions. And I think we need to go back there, because our country was much stronger when we were more community-based.
Community-based, so, because somebody saw you, somebody checked in on you, somebody knew how you were?
You had community activities where people would get together.
But when you get together with them, that's because you see this virgin last week and this week, so you can tell if something has gone wrong with him, if he's, or just having something there?
We talk about, like, let me give you the best community activity is church. Every Sunday, whether you see somebody or not, you know, so you have to keep and you go. Right. What we need are spaces like those within the communities that men, and it's not just for men, all members of the community, that they can go and be a part of a social group where the focus is on positive well-being, health, productivity, and of course, social rejuvenation. So these are spaces that need to be created, and those that I think is the most impactful. Certainly in these spaces you can have things like health promotion and psychoeducation, which we do often do, but we need to expand a lot of these groups and to rebuild the sense of community bonding that we used to have.
All right, I see you say yes, Milton, you're greatly in support of what Dr. Walcott has said. What do you consider to be one single most effective intervention that we could implement to change the trajectory that we see now?
I mean, is not what it is that we need to do, it's what we need to go back to, the grassroots, the community base, the corner reasoning, where you would have in organization would enter communities, get the young men on the corner, different ways, it kind of run a boat. You understand the corner reason? By doing so, you will definitely get them talking to you again. You'll get them saying stuff, and you will pick up, you will detect. Because doing social intervention, or community intervention, you have to detect, identify first, and then you set the treatment.
So are you suggesting that we put trained people there? Because I can see how this goes haywire if you have persons with unsound agendas, molding minds without this sort of informed perspective.
Thank you very much. And I remember now, it is a partnership because you have the referral system. What used to happen, you have the referral system. So you have, like even Herbert Gale, who would have Fathers Inc., you have other support individuals. So you refer them. We all have conversation, and we plan the necessary, how we treat and we strategize and how we treat with these situations.
And we did invite Dr. Gale this evening. He was unable to join us tonight, but it's important that you talk about these spaces that exist and these sorts of interventions that are already in place that we can duplicate in other places. Dr. Beckford, to you, what is the single biggest intervention you see that gets us out of this trajectory?
Some people might think that this is kind of one-sided, but you see the church, where most of us started from day one. You learn to say your recitation, you learn to respect the next person, you learn to know to avoid wrong and right, and so on. Also, within the church, the issues that we have in the church that is more men positive is that it's very patriarchal. So men have a space that they can strive, but guess what happened? The men are not there. So we have, it's very patriarchal in terms of the leadership, but when it come on to the committees and the other areas in the church, men are absent. If we could start with the current generation, because the current generation has gone away from the church. I asked in a class one day, how many people are attending Sunday school? And of a class of 120, 5 people raise their hands. And so you're saying to yourself, that socialization is missing. That socialization in which you come together as a group, because most of us who are in leadership positions, where we started in the church. When we have difficulties in life, we go to that church group. Very important. But so many men, that's not part of their arsenal of coping. Church is not.
And I think hearing from you, Dr. Beckford, hearing from Dr. Walcott, hearing from Milton, you're all saying the same thing in different fonts. Places, spaces that are meant for people to be able to come and connect. So whether it is corner reasoning, as Milton has said, whether it is these community groups that allow for, like church, but others that have times and places and allow people to come and meet, or putting people now in these safe spaces of church, Dr. Beckford. Each of you are saying there needs to be some sort of integration, some sort of community, some sort of coming together, allowing for men to have these safe spaces. Let me rapid fire with you all before we close out this program, because if we're putting solutions in place, and let's see where the problems are so that we can fix them. And we've gone through a full show on what we could be doing. Dr. Walcott, doing that different model of care for men.
Not really. What we need to do is find a way to get men to access the care. And as you spoke about something very important about trained professionals, there's a program some years ago that the Ministry of Health started, the PM Plus program, where they're trying to get community interventionists trained in different aspects of mental health recognition and mobilize the community. I haven't heard anything much from it, but that certainly I think that was
PM Plus.
PM Plus. I thought that was something that was in the right trajectory of what we needed to address mainly the violence issue, but the domestic violence issue within the communities, which would also address a lot of the other problems that come from that. And I think that's one of the areas that we need to think carefully on, how to sustain these programs and how to get these things institutionalized, where they are part of the healthcare system.
And that speaks to
That's the
something that
connection.
Dr. Beckford had said, which
Yeah,
is
man.
we've had successful programs. If they're given enough time to thrive and to change, that certainly
is
then would be
correct.
something that we can go back to.
And money.
And money. Milton, where should intervention start? Community, family, or workplace?
All right, so for me, everything starts at the community because family starts at the community, workplace get products from the community. So I'm thinking what we need is targeted community approach, education, value building the values. Dr. Beckford mentioned the church. You know, use up the churches, the schools in the different communities, have activities, you know, to interest meal, right? Whether it be a football competition, a domino competition, find ways, you know, creative ways to put that out there so you can pull them out. I think that's what we need.
I do think that is going to be part of the solution as well. Dr. Beckford, final word to you. Does this require a cultural reset or a policy response?
More of a policy response. Culture will always change. It's very difficult for you to change culture by intervention over time, but a policy response. A simple thing like years ago, I think it's a Patterson principle that started a values and attitude. We didn't continue with it because something like that is necessary now to avoid what we call in sociology labeling. If I come to you and say that Miss Quarry, you know, my headspace not too well, you don't laugh at me. You don't go and tell friends that you don't think Beckford I get mad. I think that boy look like him licking me or something. And so if we could have that type of policy intervention where we have programs on TV showing that it is okay to not be okay. It is okay to be mental. And I'm saying it, I'm reaching out, and so therefore try and understand me. So a good policy intervention by the government targeted at men who will say that, so you run ads that people say that, you know, I'm not feeling too well in my head, and people don't laugh at you. So really, let's call this number 1-800 mental state or something. And so policy intervention like those can help men to come back to the center, because currently we are either right of center or left of center in terms of how society expects us to be always sensible, doing the right thing, giving the right answers and so on. It's not very easy, and so for our men, and there's a women are the protected group, but men also need some level of protection, because when we go off, society suffers badly.
All right, and there is a number that exists for those of you at home who have watched this conversation and realized that there might be some assistance that you can need. It's 888 New Life that you can reach out to as one of the ways to get help and support. Gentlemen, thank you so very much for joining us inside Lead Story tonight and being part of our conversation. But let me just give my take here, because let's cut through the noise. Here's what matters. We heard tonight from 3 different perspectives: clinical, community, and structural. They all point to the same truth. Men are not necessarily falling out of the system. They're holding on until they can't. 61 men. I keep coming back to that number. Moy mentioned it as well. Not because it's the largest number in tonight's broadcast, but behind each one is a silence that somebody mistook for strength. And in some cases, a smile that somebody mistook for wellness. The sign is not always distress. Sometimes the sign is the absence of any sign at all. And yet we've built a system in our culture, in our economics, in our public health infrastructure that requires a man to announce his pain before anyone moves to help him. You heard one of our men say that earlier. When they do break, the help arrives too late. This is not a private struggle. It's a structural failure with public consequences. And structural failures have structural solutions, if the will exists to find them. The question for the government, for community, for every family in this country is a simple one. How many more before we decide that this is an emergency?
Jesus Christ loves you, and greater love hath no man. Because of his love, he opens the way. He opens eyes, ears, and minds. Open your heart and experience General Conference of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and feel his love. Greater love.
Tune in to Lead Story, weekdays at 6 p.m. Hosted by Jody Ann Quarry.
Brought to you by
Horizon, a new loan product from Access Financial Services.
Change does not happen overnight. It takes vision, commitment, and courage to reform.
So we created a number of executive agencies, which I believe, and I can say, having left this thing for, was one of the most successful initiatives undertaken in the reform process.
But transformation isn't easy.
We found in several ministries, agencies, and departments, you had square pegs in round holes.
You could almost say that public sector transformation is not a JLP policy, it's not a PNP policy. It is